right. So, we're back. Huh? All right. Thank you. You know, I will tell you, initially, when I got the call from Kim, it's been some time now, and she said, can you come do one of these dinners? She told me about how great your group is. Heard so many wonderful things about this group. And I said, I'd love to come. We were working out a time to get everything together, and I guess eventually she said, how about this date in November, right after the election? And I thought, sure, let's do it. And then we kind of both settled in and said, what are you going to talk about? Well, we weren't quite sure because we weren't quite sure. How many of you were on pins and needles the other day? Sort of. Well, I've got to tell you, I'm a little bit of a backstory. So my name's Justin Barclay, and I host a morning radio program on 9:10 a.m., Detroit's News Talk Superstation. It's a brand new format on a radio station that's been around for over 100 years. The call letters are WFDF. And a man named Kevin Adele owns that radio station. He owns a television station, television network, and a few other things. But he decided about almost a year and 3 months ago, that he wanted to flip the formats on this radio station. It had no audience really previously, and he thought that conservative talk would be just the right thing to shake it up, purely from a business standpoint. And we have had quite a bit of fun in that last year or so, I can tell you. Since then, we've had a little success. There have been other radio stations in town that have been around for a long time that you may have noticed. Maybe your favorite radio program, I talked to a few people, said, hey, where did this radio host go? Where did that radio host go? A few of these different people, favorite conservative hosts on these other radio stations, kind of disappeared out of nowhere. So you've seen changes in those stations. So we're glad to be able to not just fill that void, but also maybe step up and add a little bit to it. On our radio station, you're going to hear Glenn Beck follows me, and occasionally I get to fill in for Glenn on his national show every now and again. I'll be doing a couple. We've got some coming up during the holidays, one after Thanksgiving and into Christmas and that season. We've got Clay and Buck, which is the show that replaced Rush Limbaugh. How many of you remember Rush Limbaugh? How could you forget? The original. And we were just talking about this at dinner here with Russ. And what would he say? What would he say today? What would he say? Well, would he have had an interesting nickname for Kamala Harris, I wonder? What would he say about all of this? And I can only imagine. We also have Sean Hannity. We have Bill O'Reilly, a program by a guy named Jesse Kelly. You're going to love it if you tune in, if you haven't already. And you can get us online. I stream my morning show on the internet, Facebook and X and all these different places, so you can watch it. Rumble, if any of you are into the censorship-free YouTube, that's what Rumble is. And we have podcasts as well. So all of that out of the way. I said Tuesday, we've been having conversation. You know, this is all any of us have been talking about for a while now. But I said Tuesday, okay, I've got to stop. I got to tell you, this is what my gut is telling me. Now, I had not said much about this previously because I didn't want anyone to get overconfident, and I very much knew what we were up against. Even President Trump would say, we've got to make it too big to rig, right? We got to swamp the vote, all of those things. And so as I was telling the audience this, many people had already voted here in Michigan, and others were out. The polls had just opened, and it was in the 7 o'clock hour. I said, my gut says this. My gut says that we are going to win, and I've got this on tape. You go back to listen to it, by a landslide. That's the word I want to use, I said. It'll be along the lines of almost when Reagan won in, I think it was 88. It wasn't quite, it was 84, that's right, 84. Wasn't quite the Reagan-esque landslide. I think it was only Minnesota that that he didn't win. So, but it was close. I mean, who ever thought that we would win the Electoral College and President Trump would even win the popular vote? It's incredible, yeah. Not only that, but we've also taken back the Senate. Seems we've held on to the House. He has a massive mandate. And it's to get the job done the American people have sent them to do. We also have good news here in Michigan. So I'm here to report we've taken back control of the House in Lansing. That doesn't mean you're going to see anything drastic right away, but what it does mean, we can stop the bleeding. Yes. All the craziness. And by the way, they've got so much lined up right now in a lame duck session. They're throwing things up against the wall. She had a slide up here earlier. They are making a move right now. I think a vote tomorrow or the next day. They want to have a national popular vote contract. They want to join. It's tomorrow. So if you can get on the phone, you can call your reps. They definitely want to hear from you. I'm hearing some good things about that from Republicans in leadership. I don't want to say too much more because I want to encourage you to make those phone calls. But this essentially would put us in line with other states who have made the same pledge that we would go along with whatever the popular vote totals were. So essentially your voice wouldn't matter. Your vote wouldn't matter. This coming from the party of democracy. You know, the folks, the Democrats on the left, they love democracy, and Trump's always threatening democracy. And yet they want to take your voice and your vote away. It's incredible to me. You essentially, your vote would be left up to what people on the coast think. Los Angeles and New York. And it's just unthinkable. But the good news is we have a chance to stop it. There's going to be a lot of these issues, and I got a preview of some today speaking with folks working with leadership in the House, and it's going to be crazy the next 60, 70 days. You're going to see a lot of things dropped on us that you're going to look at and say, these people, where are they coming up? One of them was you could be thrown in jail, charged criminally, for misgendering somebody, even online in the social media. You don't even know who you're talking to, and they could throw you in jail. Lots of crazy, radical, lunatic ideas. These are the unreasonable things that, the irrational things that they have been doing and behind sort of closed doors for years now. You're going to see it all come out in the coming days. However, I can tell you that Republicans are optimistic, I guess is the best word. Had Rep. Matt Maddock on the program today, and he said, we're kind of excited because they're going to show us exactly who they are. And that'll give us an opportunity to use these votes and what they try to do here this year in 26, when everything's back on the table. And folks, everything is back on the table. Michigan went red. I mean, so this is another incredible piece of the story, because now it means that people all across the country that have money to spend, or maybe even like your Elon Musk, they have their George Soros. We have Elon Musk now. I'll go with Elon. But these folks are taking a second look at Michigan to see what's possible here in the state. So we're really excited about what's coming. In fact, there is a lot on the horizon, a lot of hope, a lot of optimism right now. But I don't want to rain on the parade, but I have to tell you, I do believe we ought to celebrate. We ought to celebrate our victories, specifically President Trump's historic victory this last week. But here's the part, and if you listen to the program, you've heard me say this is the part that matters. This is when the real work starts. This is when the tough job is actually going to begin, because on one hand, we're going to have to make sure that they actually get the things done that we've elected them to do. So we're going to have to hold folks accountable. That means we're going to have to be on the phone. We're going to have to say at times to folks that we know and we've seen and we've dealt with, hey, just remember, this is what we're here for. And don't squander the opportunity, because right now, President Trump has the House. He has the Senate. He has the mandate from the people. He survived it all. The Russia hoax, all the hoaxes. I mean, too many to name. He survived the impeachments. He survived the lawfare. I mean, I don't know if you saw today, they're gonna push this dismissal of this case, which is a crazy case in New York City anyway. They're going to push that back a little bit. Who knows what's going to happen? His attorneys are probably going to go fight that. Who knows? I think by the time it's all said and done with, they're just going to wipe it off the board. But he survived all these things. Not to mention July 13th in that field in Butler, Pennsylvania, where he's speaking at the podium at the rally. He looks up like he never does, looks at the chart, turns his head in just the right moment, and that bullet miraculously misses him by a millimeter. I mean, it's incredible. We were talking about this at dinner, and I had the same conversation with Don Jr. and Eric and Dr. Ben Carson. I haven't spoken to the president since this happened, but we've had him on many times before, and I believe the same thing that I think a lot of us do, that God spared his life. I believe his hand was on him at that moment, because he's got more for President Trump to accomplish. Amen. And not only that, but I believe, and I told these guys before the results of the election, I said, I don't think he's going to lose, because I don't think his life would have been spared for him to go on and lose. So let's follow that out. I don't think his life would have been spared for him to go on and lose, and then not be able to accomplish what it is that God's called him to do. And that's a lot of work. I think he's laid it out for us, but we've got to walk it out. So each and every one of us, I believe, is going to be integral in this part, because we were all hands on deck here, a part of the victory. So in the Senate right now, as I mentioned, I don't think he survived all of these things. To only turn around and face opposition from his own party in the Senate, that is a possibility right now. So we're watching very closely the election of leadership. The majority leader in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, is stepping down, and so they're having the elections right now. And Cornyn and Thune, who haven't had great things to say about President Trump, haven't had a great track record in the past. It's all out there for you to view. They're going to vote in a secret ballot, those two against Rick Scott, who I've met and actually really like. He's from Florida, senator from Florida. I believe he's President Trump's pick. I think he's probably the right guy for the job. So there's a push right now to see if they will do an open ballot so that we can actually see how folks vote. After all, listen, we're in historic times, unprecedented times. You know, we've heard that for the last 4 years. But we really are. And I think these people ought to go on record so we can see, and there should be some pressure as to who's voting and how. One thing is clear. We've got to have all hands on deck and everyone working together and not against this agenda, because it's bigger than President Trump even. It's bigger than the Republican Party. People came from the other side of the aisle, the Tulsi Gabbards of the world, the RFK Juniors of the world. They came out to vote in these record numbers. Dearborn, great example, absolutely. Auto workers, union workers, right? These people in Michigan specifically, who may never have even voted before, I'm hearing in record numbers, the youth vote was incredible. And how many of us, now look around the room, but the average age in here is about what the average age is at one of our Republican gatherings and has been for many years. But we're getting an injection of the youth vote right now. Yes. These kids are so passionate, and I don't know how they've done it, but their heads are screwed on straight, even when they're going through some of the indoctrination camps that they've got set up for these poor kids. They're coming out, though. They're coming out. They're seeing the light. They're getting educated. They're finding things online. Charlie Kirk. I don't know if you followed Charlie much with TPUSA. They've done fantastic work. Charlie, these kids are coming out in record numbers, and they're using all kinds of technology. They believe one of the biggest strategies that they were able to use to secure this victory was to go out and actually speak to those these are voters they call low propensity voters. They would vote conservative, but they just don't vote. So one of the plans was to go out and talk to these young men and say, this is the future that Kamala and the rest of the Democrats have set up for you, and it's a very scary future. Versus this is what we'd like to do for you and the rest of the world. And last and certainly not least, so actually I'll mention this first, but the last rally President Trump did before he closed it up was in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Did it again in 2016. It was kind of like a good luck charm for him. So he likes to come back and end it there. And he did. Now, I didn't go because last time in 2016, they were there till 3 o'clock in the morning. My radio show was from 6 to 9 in the morning, and I'm up really early, like 4 o'clock in the morning. And I said, well, you're going to get out of there at 3, and then I got to get up at 4. And I was doing the math, and it just didn't math out for me. So I said, no, I don't think it doesn't add up. I missed it, but what I heard back the report was the amount of young people there. The average age was college-age kids in a 12,000-seat arena. This is something that we all ought to be excited about because it's the future. It really is the future of our party, and I think if we look at it and we play our cards right, these people came out, and for the reasons they came out, was that optimistic, hope-filled, inspired vision that President Trump has laid out throughout his campaign. So last and certainly not least, it was during the Clinton years, it's the economy, stupid, and it was the same old song and dance this time around. They're talking about things, abortion, and things that were already decided. President Trump made a point. In fact, we just talked about this at dinner, but here in Michigan, that was decided back in 2022. That wasn't on the ballot this time around. And I think a lot of people saw that, understood it, and he made that point. I've turned this back over to the states. This is out of my hands, and people were done. That's all they were pushing. That and the slide you had up here earlier is he's Hitler. Well, the interesting thing about Hitler is, at the top of the ticket, they're saying he's Hitler, and Alyssa Slotkin was out there running ads along with a few other Senate candidates in other swing states saying, I'm going to work with President Trump if I get elected. Well, that doesn't quite add up, does it? And now we've seen they're going to meet tomorrow. President Trump's going back to the White House. Can you imagine? I'd like to be a fly on the wall there. He's walking back into the White House tomorrow to have a meeting with President Biden. Kamala Harris in her concession speech, the one that she finally got around to doing after she left her supporters standing there in the cold that night. Can you believe it? She finally got around to it. She said, you know what? I'm going to work with them. We're going to make sure that the transition goes smooth and yada, yada. So you're going to work with the very person you were just calling Hitler? None of it added up. And meanwhile, while they were saying all those things and trying to divide us between neighbor, family members, and et cetera, and there's still a lot of that division that needs to be healed, and I pray for this country to get through that. But the best healing could be, I believe, is the success. If we can show the American people, if President Trump can get the policies done, if they can get to work on day one, and from what I've understood, he has gone through, learned so much from the first time around. They've been picking these positions. You're hearing about the appointments and the cabinet members, all of this coming out now. They've had those in place for a while now. So from what I understand, they're ready to hit the ground running on day one, but I think you could even say before day one, as they're planning to get those things done now. The best thing we can do is to be there to support him. As you mentioned earlier, Kim, to be there to have his back, to support him, to let him know no matter what they throw at him, and they'll throw plenty over the next 2 years. It's not a lot of time. Think about this. Really got about a year or so to really get things done, because then the campaigns start again for 2026. And that's when he could, all over again, have the opportunity to expand those leads they have in the Senate and the House, or lose them. And the last thing we need is gridlock. What did the American people really vote for? I mean, at the time that they were talking about all these crazy issues, the really kitchen table issues were the issues that the most American people were hit with. How much does it cost now to put food on my table for my family? I got 2 little girls. One's 4 years old, and the other's 2. And I'm thinking about, what's it going to be like when they grow up? Is there going to be men in their bathrooms and locker rooms? Men in their female sports? It's just a crazy thing to even have to think about. The left is so detached from reality. They're running around telling you that they're here to defend women's rights, and they don't even know what a woman is. Sad but true. And all the American people cared about was, how much is it going to cost me this week? Do I have enough money to make it to the end of the month? I'm working a job right now that it's taken all of the gas, all the money I got just to put gas in the car to get there, just to keep the job. And how much does it cost for child care? All of these things are crippling the American people. And President Trump stood up with answers and solutions. Now, the mainstream media would never cover any of that. They'd never share, they'd never show you what his plan was. But he's put out extensive plans. And I'm not talking about any of that Project 2025 stuff. Real Agenda 47 on his website, in depth, in detail. And if you're seeing them now, if you're watching social media, a lot of these videos and vignettes are coming out where he's in depth, in detail, going through what he's going to do and how he's going to get it done. And I am excited. Mass deportations, they're saying, are going to start on day 1. What's that look like? Well, it's pretty simple. If you are here in the country illegally and you've committed a crime, you're going home. We're going to make America safe again. And then there's, that's right, you can clap for that, absolutely. Those aren't my words. But I think about that with my wife and my kids all the time. Are they safe? Are any of us safe? And we've seen the stories here about what's happening in our own backyard. So that's day 1. And I can't wait to see what comes of it. We might even put a man on Mars with Elon Musk involved. I know one thing's for certain. They're going to give him a big old shredder and start shredding some of all that money and the waste that we're spending. He's going to start cutting, I think, when they get in. I don't know if he'll be on a cabinet or he'll be an advisor. But how many of you would like to have lower taxes and less government waste, fraud, and abuse? I mean, you work hard enough for your money, and you've worked hard throughout the years, you ought to be able to use it, and of course, the way you see fit. The way the government has just been wasting that money. And thankfully, you got a bit of a preview of how we narrowly diverted disaster. I don't know if you saw it. Kamala Harris's campaign raised about $1 billion. Did you see that? Oh, they paid celebrities. All of these celebrities they had coming out for them. Did you see? They paid Oprah $1 million to shoot that TV show she did here. $1 million. I think they gave Eminem a million or two. Lizzo, who's a rapper, female rapper from Detroit, they gave her a little bit of money too. They did a podcast with hundreds of thousands of dollars spent. $10 million to get Beyonce to come out. And none of it added up. Well, it did at the end, $1 billion, and they're $20 million in the hole. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? She was the one who said she knew how to fix the economy. I think we really dodged a bullet there. So there's so much I could tell you about the hope and the optimism. I really am more optimistic than I ever have been before. We have faced the giant together. The machine. We knew for quite some time it wouldn't be Biden. It was my thought it didn't matter who it was, because the machine would go to work trying to make that person, whoever it was, viable. Luckily for us, and by the grace of God, I believe that was too much of a heavy lift for the machine to do. And at the same time, what have we learned? More and more people are waking up to the fact that the mainstream media is lying to them on a daily basis. You can't believe anything that comes out of their mouths. They have been part of this revelation themselves. So, as I think in the same way as they had charged President Trump, they'd raid on Mar-a-Lago, all these things, and you watch his poll numbers just climb. And there were pundits saying, well, he might win in spite of. What if he won because of all of it? As people said, I'm tired of watching the government go after this guy like they go after us. He's one of us. And that was before he worked the window or the fries at McDonald's or climbed up in the garbage truck. But he ran one of the most iconic and one of the most memorable campaigns I've ever seen. I'm pretty sure you'd say the same thing. I don't think we'll ever see one like it. And hopefully not. So I am hopeful because I do believe that we have quite a path up ahead of us, that the future for our kids and our grandkids is brighter than ever before. But I'm also sober, knowing that we play a role. And we can't do like we've done in the past. We can't go to the ballot box, vote, and be done. We have to stay active. We have to stay engaged. We have to stay on top of it to keep those elected accountable, but also to support them, to let them know we approve and we want that agenda passed. And it's our last chance, folks. The Democrat Party may be done. If we can press on, they don't have any leadership now. They're scrambling. There's no one to lead that party. And they know it. Remember James Carville, the Raging Cajun? He's out there talking about it right now. He said very depressed. They don't know who they're going to. So his idea is he wants to have like some sort of event, like a convention in 26 where they bring all their talent in and start pushing these people out because they don't have a leader. Who is that? Obama's been pulling the strings behind the scenes for a while, but I think even he's lost a lot of cachet because they weren't able to pull this off. So we have the opportunity to really put an end to all this nonsense and the Democrat Party if we can stay focused and, as President Trump says, stay in the fight, fight, fight. That's what we've got to do. So I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful. I believe we're all here. We're all called to do something in this fight for such a time as this. And I believe that God's got something great planned for this country. And I said it on my program, this election wasn't just about the next 4 years. I believe it's about the next 250 in this country. Just President Trump's idea about what he wants to do for the birthday of this country. Have you heard this? He wants to have a national fair in Iowa where each state will come together. I mean, it makes me proud to look at that flag. People are waving the flag again. They are proud to be Americans. The amount of patriotism that is going to come out of that event and the boost to the economy, just something as big as that. Can you imagine? We'd probably have some sort of indigenous something day on that day, and they do something completely wacky and different if the Democrats were in charge. But this time around, I think we're going to thank God and celebrate this great nation and its history. I believe not only this country in the next 250 years, but I believe so goes this nation, the rest of the world will follow. And there are countries around the world, when President Trump proves it's possible to accomplish the deportations and clean the country back up. They're already seeing it in New York City. After he won, they're already talking about how they're safer on the streets in New York. There's not as many problems on the subways. I mean, it's incredible. They're already talking about it. Now, I've already seen gas prices go down. Little things. We know that Hamas and the Houthis have both said that they want an end to the war. It's like they saw him, they said, oh, game over, we're done. Putin's on the phone saying he wants a reset with U.S. and Russia. I mean, it's incredible what's happening right now. And he hasn't even put his hand on the Bible yet. Imagine that. So I'm excited. I'm enthusiastic. I'm hopeful about what's coming in the next few years here for our country. But I want to ask you to stay engaged, stay involved. Whether it's, being involved in events like this, in organizations like this, listening to my program, sharing the stories, and we're going to try and share the stories that you're not going to hear anywhere else. We do that on a daily basis. Get that information out to other people. Help wake them up. All of that's going to be so important moving forward because we've got to make sure that we're communicating. We know that the mainstream media is not going to do it. In fact, they are rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic right now. Ratings for MSDNC are down in the tank. They've cratered worse than they've ever cratered before after election night. And CNN just announced they're going to have massive cuts and layoff, and you're looking at big names that are going to go. Yeah. Who knows? Maybe Elon will buy CNN too. I don't know. I do know that if he didn't buy that X, if he didn't buy Twitter, if he didn't get involved in the ways that he did in Pennsylvania specifically, we may be talking about a completely different situation tonight. Yeah. We've got some massive minds, some great talent, some folks from across the aisle that have reached out that are working now to accomplish this. As Michigan and many other states went red, I don't think they went Republican. I think they went reality. I think they went reasonable. I think they went common sense. Make common sense great again? Yeah. Every day I say it's truth, logic, and common sense. That's what we're trying to give you a daily dose of, and we won't stop. So I thank you for the opportunity to come together tonight, but I also thank you for the contribution into this victory, because it wasn't just President Trump in the fight. It was all of you right alongside him together to take this country back and make it great again. And of course, all the credit goes to God. Now, if you have questions, I'm happy to take them. I see some hands out there.
I'm worried about you. You're an AM station and George Soros is buying up all the radio stations. What will happen?
She said, I'm worried about you. You're an AM station and George Soros is buying up all the radio stations. I'm worried about what will happen. I can't tell you. I say every day on the air, I say, look, all I know is no matter what the headlines are, the good news is God is still on the throne. In my book that she had flashing up here earlier, I wrote a book called Good News, Hope, and Encouragement for Trying Times. You can get it on my website if you ever want it, but I'll just give you the gist of it. My little girl, our oldest, she's just going to turn 4 here in December. She was born 27 weeks, about 3 months early. We found ourselves in the hospital. My wife's water broke at like 3 a.m. And from the day that her water broke to the day we brought our little girl home was 77 days. It was a challenge. I've never been through anything like that before. I will tell you, though, that we felt a peace, like the Bible says, beyond understanding. We felt God's hand on us through it all. We were watching lots of things happen around us. There were other little babies that were born early that had issues. One right across from us. We were in a big room. There were about 10 beds, little incubators in this room. And one right across from us was a little girl who was born with her intestines outside of her body. She was in a lot of pain. Her parents were having to make this long trip, hour or two a day to get there. They were giving her medication. Now, they were able to do surgery, and they were able to heal her, mend her, and put her organs back in her body. But thinking about all the things that we watched, and there wasn't a thing wrong with our little girl. Gave us a new perspective and a gratitude. That even in some of those darkest moments that we could find something to be grateful for, that we could find something, a perspective to thank God for. So I don't know what's going to happen with the radio stations, but I know he has bought into a company called Odyssey, which owns several major radio stations here in the area. Sports station, The Ticket, WOMC, oldie station, thank you, YCD, country station, WWJ, the news station. So if you are concerned about what you're hearing on a very popular news station, just know that George Soros has a hand in it. I don't know about you, but that might be of concern. Yep, WWJ. All right, back there.
Is there anything that's going to be done about the news media? Is there anything that could be done?
Yeah, that's a good question. Is there anything that will be done or could be done about the news media? It's already happening. As I mentioned, CNN losing record numbers in the ratings, MSNBC the same. From what I understand, the parent company, MSNBC, is probably going to spin them off because they don't want them on the books anymore. They're damaged goods. These are just things I've heard. CNN, there's already the rearranging of the deck chairs on the Titanic. They're going to try and get rid of. They've already tried to make a move to the center, a little bit more to appear that way. Anybody see Scott Jennings on CNN? He's the one like Republican that they allow. He's so great. So he's got a voice even in the middle of that craziness and that sanity and that chaos. But what I mean is the people are already voting. They've said, we don't want any of this anymore, and they're turning it off in record numbers, even the newspapers here in town. I got some nicknames. I'll watch some of the stories that come out and the way they cover things. There was a story of here in Michigan, a young lady was killed by a man here in the country illegally, her boyfriend. He was here in the country, had been deported under the Trump administration, and found a way to how to get back inside the country. So it all culminated in one day where he was in a car with her driving down the highway. He shoots her, dumps her body out of the car, kills her, and the Detroit Snooze does a story about this, and in the headline, instead of saying this illegal immigrant killed this young lady, they say, the man, this is for the sentencing, the man who was responsible for the death of the woman that caused a political, basically it was a campaign issue, a political stir. Well, I'll tell you about this story. The only reason it even made the news is because somebody listening to my show, and I'm not giving too much information, but she's tied in with law enforcement, sent me the message and said, this story that they're reporting, they're not giving you even half of the details on it. And so we dug in. I passed it along to some people at the Midwesterner. I don't know if you're familiar with that website, the Midwesterner.news. They do great work. And I said, you guys got to look into this because there's something going on here. And they did. President Trump found out. He did a visit just to Michigan for that specific reason, to highlight the story. And I will tell you that these newspapers, unfortunately, because I believe we need them. I believe we need to hear the stories in the news reported, but in a fair way. We're not getting that from them right now. Legacy institutions that are failing, unfortunately, and I hate to see that. So, yeah, I believe it's already happening. As from the standpoint of can they do anything legally, President Trump has talked about, because of the CBS 60 Minutes interview, he's suing 60 Minutes. I think you're going to see lawsuits and things like that. He looked at ABC and could I take their license away? A lot of people don't understand that the actual network doesn't have a license, but the television stations that are local, they do have local license. And if someone were to become concerned about how they were serving the public, they may be able to write a letter to the TV stations locally and request that that letter be included in the public file of the television stations, so that when the television station's license come up for renewal, they have to go through that process with the FCC. All of that is documented in the file. Well, that sounds like a fantastic idea. I didn't say it, but she said maybe we should write to those stations.
How about Saturday Night Live?
Saturday Night Live, another great, well, this is a great story. She said, how about Saturday Night Live? They gave Kamala Harris at the end of the campaign all of this free publicity. And they kind of broke the law. However, it backfired.
It did.
Because then they had to turn around and give President Trump equal time. And they gave him equal time. Saturday Night Live, which very few people watch because it's on late at night now. And it's not as funny as it used to be, is it? You know.
It's not funny, but I had to see what they were going to do.
So they gave her a little spot, but they had to give him like the 60-second commercial in the middle of football and NASCAR. And guess what? That's exactly the audience he wanted to reach. I mean, he would have had to pay millions for that. By the way, that's probably why he has like 30 million left in the campaign coffers. And he said the other day, I heard Kamala had an issue. She's $20 million in debt. He's just typing it out. I can see him. He said, I would be happy to give her a little money to help take care of that, you know, in order to help the healing process, you know. Okay, here's a question. Do you see anything the Democrats may do to prevent Trump from being inaugurated January 20th? Anything is possible. And everything it's all on the table. So that being said, as I mentioned, this is just literally the beginning. This is where the fight begins right now, right? There's a lot of different like ideas and thoughts, and I don't discount them. I think they're all interesting. I think any ideas, any thoughts that they may have had, any plots or any schemes, I think the mandate, the size of this vote in this election is going to make it very tough, by the way the people have spoken, to pull anything off that they wanted to do. It's not impossible, but that again is the reason why we've got to stay vigilant and stay in the fight. John Ratcliffe, she said, just came in. Breaking news, John Ratcliffe is going to be the CIA director. John Ratcliffe. He was acting DNI, I think. Was he DNI at the time? He was DNI back in the last administration. So there you go. That's a good one. Ratcliffe is good.
I question, flop number one. All we have in this world is a good name. Days of Walter Cronkite, news media, they're all big gone. They're all gone. The question I have, near the end of the election, many supposedly smart commentators, including the woman from Iowa who was very good at politics.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Why would they come out and do something so stupid?
Yeah.
To say Trump's going to lose by 3 points when he won by 13 points. Her career was over.
Fantastic.
So many people, so many mainstream news people, they knew what's going to happen, and they gave up their name.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make it, their careers are over. What are they going to do the rest of their lives?
Fantastic question. And it's more of a comment, but I will agree with you, caller. Thank you. And you're more than welcome to call in any time. You know that. But I really, it's a fantastic point because Ann Seltzer in Iowa, who was the one who ran that poll, ran around, oh, Trump's going to win Iowa. No. Or lose Iowa. Yeah, but Kamala's going to win. I knew that was a load when I heard it the first time. And I think everybody did. The other one is Alan Lichtman. Does anybody know Professor Alan Lichtman? And the keys that he had to the election? From the day one, he came out with the key. Now, his keys are really interesting. But from the day one he came out with it, I knew he was off because he was misinterpreting his own keys through his own bias. And it's with Seltzer, and I think Lichtman and a lot of the commentators, the pundits, they can't help themselves. They've got Trump derangement syndrome. So they can't see the forest for the trees. It's like when you're talking to anyone you know, you love, you care about, and they don't see it. They can't see it for whatever reason. They're just brainwashed. It's a major problem. It really is. It really is. But that's a fantastic point. Yeah, I'm sure they'll find a place for them somewhere at some point. Maybe they'll write a book about how they got it wrong. Who knows? Here's one. In Michigan, over 800,000 voters did not vote for Senate in this election. How does Michigan get Republican people down ballot? Any ideas? DNC has a machine in Michigan. We were talking about that tonight too, the Senate race. There are a lot of people that I think came in and voted for Trump and then left. And there were a lot of people that didn't want to vote for Rogers because of their ideological differences. they voted Libertarian or they didn't vote at all. I've heard from many who listened to my program that thought the same way. So I don't know specifically when it comes to the Senate how you mobilize that. But I think one thing that candidates could do, because I think when you did see this happen, it worked out very well, is that those candidates running down ballot have to be outspoken about being America first, and they have to be outspoken about being in line with President Trump and in line with the agenda. Because he did, but I will say, because I like Mike, and he was on the program quite a bit, there was still a little bit of the past that came up to haunt him, things that he'd said on CNN. And I believe from the day President Trump endorsed him, I knew he'd be the one, you know? So I think you can't blame him for that. Although I will say, when it comes to some of the other races, I'll give you one specific. On the west side of the state, in Michigan's 3rd Congressional District, it's very similar to the Senate race. The Democrat incumbent, she won that race in 22 against a guy named John Gibbs. She came out, and Gibbs was great, but she came out and just appealed to everyone as just this reasonable, rational person sitting on her front porch. And, you know, Democrats, you got to quit spending all this money. And the first thing she did, and many other things since, is just just completely radical votes. Her record's really bad. But Paul Hudson, who was the Republican candidate, ran against her this time. I don't think that he was vocal enough to tell everyone that he was President Trump's supporter, that he was America first, that he, you know, so there are some issues. And vice versa, look at Tom Barrett, how well he did picking up a House seat. Tom Barrett did fantastic. So I think there are opportunities there, but here's the other thing too. Michigan, because of the focus we have now, going red, and all the money and resources pouring in, I think it's going to be really fascinating to see what happens. But we're going to need you more than ever. Anybody else?
Any other questions?
Fantastic evening. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you, and let's make America great again.